In the United States, we have two very important national cemeteries. One of the cemeteries is located in Washington, D.C., called the Arlington National Cemetery. Arlington Estate was established by George Washington's adopted grandson, George Washington Parke Custis, to be a living memorial to the first president, where approximately 400,000 unknown veterans are buried. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is Arlington National Cemetery's most iconic memorial. For nearly 100 years, it has stood at the heart of the cemetery, serving as a site for reflection on service, valor, and sacrifice. While exact numbers are unknown, estimates indicate that nearly half of the Civil War dead were never identified. I've also learned that there are individual Civil War unknown burials, as well as the remains of 2,000 Union and Confederate soldiers. There is also one located here in Washington, called Tahoma National Cemetery. In the Tahoma National Cemetery, there are around 60,000 veterans buried. Tahoma National Cemetery was established by the Department of Veteran Affairs on November 11, 1993. Today, we will be discussing some of the stories of some amazing people buried here. Harold R. Asland, born in 1920 on January 20th, and later passed in 2013 on June 22nd. He enlisted in the Navy on May 19, 1942, and received specialized training in electronics prior to serving in the islands of South Pacific. He was assigned to Argus Unit 12 and was involved in the island hopping campaign. Harold was a very generous man, giving freely of his time, energy, listening, helping, and more. His favorite saying was, "We will do it the best we can." He was devoted to his family, church, friends, employers, and country. Woodrow Wilson Abendhaus. Woody was born October 18, 1918 in Newport, Idaho, and died January 28, 2013 at the Evergreen Hospice Center in Kirkland, Washington. Woody was 94 years old. Woody served in the U.S. Army. Woody lived a very happy life with much service to others and travel. Woody loved the Lord with all of his heart and served him throughout his life. Aaron, who was born on April 10th of the year 1945. He passed away November 15th of 2021. Philip was an attorney and pastor. In 1962, at the age of 17, he enlisted in the United States Air Force. During his time in the U.S. Air Force, he received his GED as well as learned to be an aerial photographer. Philip leaves to cherish his memory of his loved wife, Gladys Aaron, 2 sons, 3 granddaughters, 1 grandson, 1 great-granddaughter, and a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, and friends. Sonny Acostro Jr. He was born on October 10, 1960, and passed away on October 22nd of 2021. Sonny was proud to be a career sailor in the United States Navy, beginning with his enlistment at Subic Bay, Philippines in 1985, and accumulating as the lieutenant commander in the Navy Supply Corps. His military services spanned 29 years and across multiple theaters during the Global War on Terror, where he distinguished himself as one of the Navy's very best field-grade officers. Sonny will forever be remembered for his joyful smile, selflessness, and passion for creating culinary masterpieces. Sergeant Gordon "Gordy" Carson was born July 30th, 1924, and passed away November 13th of 1998. He was a non-commissioned officer with Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment in the 101st Airborne Division of the United States Army during World War II. Carson was one of the 140th Toccoa men of the Easy Company. Carson's life story was featured in the 2010 book, A Company of Heroes, Personal Memories about the Real Band of Brothers and the Legacies They Left Us. Frado said from his research on Gordon Carson, much of it done at the Guinevere Historical Society, he determined that Carson was one of the best athletes to ever come out of Guinevere High. The athletic ability was observed by fellow soldiers during the war. During that time, he developed a reputation as a ladies' man and was given the nickname Loverboy by his company mates.
If you could introduce yourself and tell what you've been through, like a little background of yourself real quick.
Yeah, so I joined the Army when I was 17 years old, joined the Army Reserve, and that was pre-9/11. I deployed to Iraq the end of 2003 to the beginning of 2005. My first 10 years I was enlisted, I was a mechanic, then I commissioned. I'm now a clinical social worker. I'm a major. I'm currently in a combat operational stress control unit, but I've had a wide variety of assignments over the past 22 years. I've been commanding officer for a hospital. I've been an executive officer, opportunity leader, victim advocate, managed our substance use program, so lots of different things over the years.
And then could you say your name for everyone, so if they don't know you or anything?
I'm Major Leanna Wallbauer. Here at Kentridge, I'm a social worker, and then now in the Army, I'm a clinical social worker.
And then what differences, if any, did you notice in yourself once you came back?
Yeah, there was definitely a shift, and it's interesting because what the Army had told us what to expect, teaching us about anxiety and post-traumatic stress, the way that I understood it was not the way that I was experiencing it. And so I was left for many years just trying to grapple and trying to figure out, what is going on, and why am I feeling this way? And it wasn't until, years later where I had a much better understanding and knowledge of moral injury and post-traumatic stress. And with a lot of support from my husband and dear friends, I was able to do a lot of self-reflection and a lot of therapy and a lot of work to overcome that.
What were some things you experienced while being in the military?
Well, over the past 22 years, I've had a variety of experiences, and my relationship with the Army has evolved over that time and continues to change. On the one hand, I've experienced inexplicable harassment, discrimination, combat trauma, moral injury. And on the other side, the Army pulled me out of poverty, helped me financially to be able to get through college, and taught me leadership skills. And the Army has really done a great job, my mentors and my leaders, of tapping into my strengths and allowing that part of me that's a collectivist, that's a fighter, to use those things to better my subordinates and really allow me to shine. And despite all those hardships, I feel really lucky that I've been able to benefit from post-traumatic growth. And I'm pretty sure that without those challenges, without that adversity, I would not be the clinician I am. I would not be the partner. I would not be the mother I am had I not had those experiences. And overall, I've had an amazing career, and I've been incredibly successful. Sometimes I pinch myself. I don't know how I made it to field grade officer. And so it's, it's complicated. As I said initially, I have a complicated love-hate relationship with the Army, and there are times where I have extreme pride in my service and for what we collectively have done, and there are other times where I have immense shame.
Last question that we have is, how can students get involved in supporting our veterans?
Yeah, so there are tons of veteran service organizations out there that you can get involved with. I absolutely encourage, when you come of age and you're able to register to vote, do your civic duty and vote for policies that support veterans. Get out into your communities, do something that is beyond yourself, do something that is in service of your peers, of your community, of your family, of fellow mankind. I would ask that you be aware of and reject that common stereotypical image that comes to mind when you hear the word veteran, because veterans come in many shapes, sizes, and forms. I'm a veteran. Nurse Morse, that's what a veteran looks like. Mr. Newman, that's what a veteran looks like. And then lastly, I would challenge your generation to understand that things like substance use disorder and mental health disorders, oftentimes those are a manifestation of something bigger and deeper and some kind of traumatic experience. So treating those people with compassion and dignity, that's my challenge to all of you.
Thank you. Hi, if you could introduce yourself for the people who don't know you, and then state your title in the military and what you did.
I'm Staff Sergeant Eric Newman. I teach 10th and 11th grade as Mr. Newman here in the East Wing.
And then what was your title and what did you do?
Oh, so I'm a staff sergeant. That's what this rank here is indicating. It's NCOs, like sergeants. There's a number of sergeants. They are the leaders of the enlisted corps of men and women in the military. So my job in the military is, or my rank and my title usually indicates that I am a first line leader of troops and on the ground, the hands-on soldiers that are working to get much of the work done for the military.
So the first question is, what was it like to come back after being in the military for so long?
I think one of the most important things is it's different for me, because it's going to be different for every single person returning from an active duty status. I'm currently reserve, so I still obviously am in the military, but now I'm only serving 1 weekend a month. And it all has something to do with who they were before they went into the military, and that shows how someone changes after. For me, I had already begun being a teacher. I was already teaching high school and middle school at the time that I joined and became active duty. I took a break from teaching to become a soldier. And I think one of the most interesting things that happened was I was serving with young people who were the same age as the students that I had taught the year before. They had become, they were now 18, and I had taught 17-year-olds the previous year. So these were, maybe not literally, but very similar to the students that I had just finished teaching. And now we were at the same rank, same title, same job in the military. And this helped me when I eventually emerged out of the Army and returned back to a teacher. I recognized that the people in high school are just a few years away from being soldiers themselves if they choose to be. And this changed a lot of how I teach and how I treat the students that are in my class, because I've had this experience where they became my battle buddies. They became the people I had to rely on for life and death. They have that maturity, they have that responsibility, they are capable of doing so much things, and a year is not really any difference. And so as a teacher, coming back into the classroom, now as an instructor instead of a peer, it really changed my perspective of the relationships and capabilities that students have.
Our next question is, what were some things you experienced while being in the military?
My favorite anecdote is always the month of training that I spent before going to Afghanistan, where it was supposed to simulate an intense combat environment, and I spent an entire month without ever leaving the tank. Food was brought to us, we fueled up, but everything that I could do was inside that tank or on top of the tank. And so for over 4 weeks, I never left my tank that I was driving. Of course, I did then, in a few months after that, did deploy to Afghanistan. The Afghanistan deployment was relatively safe, which is another way of saying boring. Veterans that come back from a war will tell you there are only 2 days when it comes to a combat environment: boring days and bad days. And fortunately for me, I had a lot of boring days. I was the only member that went with my company that could drive a tank. We didn't think there'd be any tanks when we arrived in Afghanistan on our base there in Afghanistan, and lo and behold, we went to the motor pool and discovered that there was a tank. And we wanted to take it out and use it as a means of a show of force and a show of presence. But I was the only person who could operate the tank. So I had to then train quickly a new crew since I was going to continue driving it, I had to train a new crew to operate the turret. And that was one of my favorite experiences with being in the military and being in combat arms.
Thank you. So, over the course of you being in the military, how have things changed to be more inclusive?
I actually was in since 2010, and there's been a lot of changes that occurred during that time. Among them was the inclusion of females in combat arms, which was previous, or at the time that I joined up, a male-only occupation. So infantry and tank drivers and tank operators like myself, when I first joined up, my basic training cohorts were all male. By the time I left, though, I was relinquishing the driver's seats to women soldiers as well. When I was there around 2014, the military began to become more inclusive of people in the LGBTQ spectrum. Now, since 1993, we've always allowed members of the LGBTQ community to join under the requirement that they remain closeted for their safety. 2013, 2014 saw a change where we encouraged them to be open so that we could express the American diversity that's in the military. That has continued into 2022, where now those individuals joining the military can now indicate on a particular form what gender they are identifying as. And as soon as on that database their gender is marked as one thing, that's how we refer to them, as sir or ma'am. That's what bathrooms they use. That's what physical fitness scores they are being challenged against, and what height and weight that they need to make the requirements of. The military will also then step in if there's some dysphoria there regarding the physical presentation of gender on that soldier. If that stress and frustration can be relieved by some surgery or other hormonal treatments, the military steps in to provide that so that the soldier is well balanced and is strong and has a strong sense of identity to continue enforcing the military, helping and supporting the military.